Hey, what's up guys, this is Joe and Tell, and today I'm going to be reviewing the LG SK10Y. Thank you to LG for sending this out to me. This is a Dolby Atmos soundbar, and I'm going to see how this sounds and how it compares to my actual Dolby Atmos system. So getting right into it, a lot of people are going to want to know, how does this thing sound? My first impressions of it were that it's a lot different than what I'm used to as far as my own Dolby Atmos system. So I'm using an AVR and some bookshelf speakers all around and a subwoofer. I know what that sounds like in my place. This time what I wanted to do was something a little different, and I tested it at my wife's parents' house. And yeah, so my first impressions were that it sounded different, right? And I think what they were going for is they wanted to make sure that it did give you that surround sound experience, even if you didn't have the rear speakers, which they also did send me. It's important to note that if you're coming from TV speakers, this is going to be a major upgrade. So for sure, if you're coming from a TV, it would be easy. If you're considering a soundbar and you want Dolby Atmos, yeah, you may want to check this out. Now, if you're trying to decide between a Dolby Atmos soundbar like this one or a typical Dolby Atmos setup, then if you have the space, I would still consider getting the actual system. Previously, I reviewed budget soundbars and I wasn't extremely impressed, and my main gripe was mainly that they weren't wide enough to give that stereo effect, and it's because the soundbar itself wasn't wide enough. Whereas this one is pretty wide, and I think they went to the opposite extreme, meaning that they made sure that there was some stereo effect. You could definitely tell when something's coming from the left or the right, and it's because they have speakers all over the place. They have speakers on the sides of this thing, on the top, on, all over the place. That gives it an enhanced effect, and at some points it sounds a little bit hyper realistic, so a little bit exaggerated, let's just say. But I would prefer that to not having a stereo image or everything sounding like it's coming from a mono source. If you're looking at this, you're probably gonna be using it for TV, movies, and music. And so for TV and movies, I think it does a very good job. It has a lot of bass, the voices sound very clear with it. But the problem I have is when it comes to music, I'm very picky when it comes to music, and so I have certain tracks that I use that I know, and definitely when I use the soundbar, it sounds different. It doesn't sound the same as when I play it through my average regular speakers, and I think it's partially because it is a satellite system, meaning there's a soundbar and then there's separate sub. So that has something to do with it, but also because they have different DSP modes. With this soundbar here, LG has partnered up with Meridian Technologies, and Meridian did the tuning on this one as well. Out of the box, it came set up as bass blast, so I can only assume that means that the bass is enhanced. And what it reminded me of are those previous Bluetooth speakers that I reviewed where it had that bass enhancement button, and it also had that clear voice. And so that's what it sounds like when I'm using this mode. The vocals sound very clear, so a lot of intelligibility. It's good for TV, meaning I don't have to turn it up extremely loud to be able to understand what's going on. And the bass sounds good. They also have the standard mode, movie mode, music mode, and then an adaptive mode. And so you may want to experiment with that. What I found was when I was using it at my wife's parents' house, bass blast sounded the best. I tested this in my living room, and in my living room, ASC sounded the best. So you're gonna have to experiment and see which one sounds the best for you guys. Now you may also wonder how it sounds with Dolby Atmos. So I did test it with some Dolby Atmos content, and I really do think it does a good job of convincing you that stuff is coming from the top, even more so than, maybe my system even, because I have ceiling speakers and I kind of have it set so that it's not overbearing, whereas this is set up to make sure that that there's some Dolby Atmos content. Rain sounds like it's coming from the top, and I think it does a really good job. If I were to explain how the system sounds, I would say it kind of sounds like, it reminds me of headphones. Imagine two big headphones on your ears, right? Whereas my system sounds like I'm listening to speakers that are a good 10 feet plus away, and it produces a convincing sound stage where, a band might be sitting that far away. Whereas this sounds more like I'm listening to headphones. And so they utilize the rear speakers more than I would expect. And I think that's a good idea, because a lot of times you're further away from the front speakers than you need to be, than you should be. And so a lot of times the rear speakers are closer to you, and they help with intelligibility. Basically, they help with the fact that you don't have to turn up the volume so loud in order to understand what's going on if you're watching TV or movies. So to reiterate, the sound to me does not sound accurate. That's not how I would describe it, but it does sound convincing. It sounds exaggerated, but it's still fun to listen to. So it's kind of hard to describe.
Almost 4 a.m. and I've been watching all kinds of movies and TV shows. I didn't even realize the time went by so fast. I kind of just got sucked in. So maybe that'll give you an idea how it sounds.
I like it. I think if you had guests over who haven't experienced Dolby Atmos, I think that they might be impressed with the way it sounds. Now bring over an audiophile friend and play some music, and that person might not be as impressed. You get where I'm going with this? So what this is not a replacement for is it's not a replacement for 2-channel audio. It's not a replacement for bigger speakers if you can afford them and if you have space for them. Because keep in mind, this is not an inexpensive system. I think it goes for around $1,000. Sometimes it goes on sale. And then when you add in these wireless surrounds, adds a little bit more to that equation. The word I was looking for is immersive. It sounds very immersive, and that's not a bad thing. It might not be accurate, but it does sound immersive, and I like that. Good job, LG. Good job, Meridian. So here's the funny thing. I had this set up at my house where I usually have my Dolby Atmos set up, and after a few days of using it, my wife did ask me to return it back to the way it was before, just because she's used to our existing system. On the flip side of that, when I took it to her parents' house, they don't have a system like we have, and so I asked to see what they thought. They were away, and when they came back, this is the reaction from her dad.
If they see your review on this thing, they're gonna love the sucker. I'm loving it right now. Even at the low volume, that's what makes it good.
Yeah.
Normally speakers at low volume sucks.
Right.
It almost sounds like it's live.
So as far as setup, I found it pretty straightforward. One thing I did notice is this is a really long soundbar, so keep that in mind. Make sure you have space for this. If you don't, then they have smaller options. It was pretty straightforward. All I had to do was plug in an HDMI going directly to my projector. At her parents' house, I had it connected to their LG TV. LG really wanted me to make sure that I was using an LG TV for this video, so there you go. With inputs, you have a few different options. It has 2 HDMI inputs. It has ARC, so you can actually use your remote to change the volume. If your TV supports it, it's able to turn on and off with your TV. So you only have to press one button. The soundbar and your TV turn off at the same time. They turn on at the same time, and the volume is controlled from there. You also have the option of using this with an auxiliary. You have the option to use it via Bluetooth, and it also has an option to be a source for Chromecast. So I have Google Homes all around, and so I can tell the Google Home, hey, play this song on the LG soundbar, and it'll play. As far as setup, the other thing you may want to do is, out of the box, I had to do an update, so make sure to connect it up over Wi-Fi and do the update first, because it did change the way it sounded for the better. I think it looks really good. They did a good job with the materials. I'm not sure if this is aluminum or plastic, but it looks like aluminum, and they did the same thing on subwoofers, has the same type of finish. I think it looks really good. The one thing I really liked about it was that you could see through the grill on the front, and so you can see the volume control, and that's a problem that I had with some of the other ones. I couldn't tell what input source I was at. With this one, it's very clear. It says specifically HDMI 1. It tells you when Dolby Atmos is coming through it, shows you the volume. All very good stuff. So this also does come with a mounting kit in case you do want to mount it on the wall instead of placing it on top of a surface. What you get in this giant box, this is the biggest box that I've seen. What you're gonna get is you're gonna get the soundbar itself sitting on top. You're gonna get the subwoofer, all the cables to power it up, the remote, some batteries, manual, and mounting brackets. I would highly recommend that if you're looking at the soundbar that you do get the wireless rear surround kit, because it does add a lot to the sound. It makes it sound a lot better, a lot more immersive, and so I think it's a no-brainer. If you're gonna spend on this, get the rear speakers as well. And what that comes with is it comes with a receiver, the wire, and then the speakers themselves. The cables are pretty long, so that's not an issue. So overall impressions, I think it sounds good for what it is. It's a sound bar, it has small speakers in there, it has up-firing speakers, has side speakers, and so it does a good job of immersing you in the sound, especially if you get those rear surround speakers. The sub does a good job of blending, and it has more than enough bass in most situations. And yeah, I would be happy to recommend this to somebody who's looking for a soundbar. Who it's not for is somebody who's expecting sound that's equivalent to big speakers, because there's no replacement for displacement, meaning big speakers are going to sound like big speakers, and you can't really go against that. So that's it. I'm gonna leave affiliate links for all of the products that I mentioned here. Again, thank you to LG for sending this out for me to review. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos, and check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Joe and Tell. Anyway, that's it. Take care. Bye-bye.